Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week, we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month, and there's also a free trial option. And I'm posting all of my regular recruiting content on the Patreon site. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is episode 97, OU Game 1, Why Recruiting Matters. So first off, we're going to talk recruiting news. Then we'll talk a little bit about the OU game, and then we'll talk a little bit about week one nationally. We're going to sprinkle in OU game stuff and national stuff, especially as it ties into national recruiting and some recruiting stuff as the season goes on. So expect a little more team and program talk at least once a week, and we'll obviously have recruiting episodes and talking about 2025 and 2026 and 2027 as the news happens. So first off, we'll hit the recruiting news. No commitments of note right now. OU is waiting on one big name, Andrew Babalola, the offensive tackle from the Kansas City, Kansas area. 5 teams have been believed to be in the mix consistently. It looks to most folks that Stanford's kind of fading. Auburn is throwing money at everyone everywhere, so they're trying to sort of buy their way back in. And we'll talk a little bit more Auburn in a minute, recruiting in a minute. Michigan obviously seemed to be the leader, but we still don't have a decision date. And Missouri is somewhere in this mix, depending upon who you talk to. They're either really in the mix or they're not really that heavily involved. So that seems to be all over the place. OU is either 5th or 2nd, getting closer and closer to Michigan at number 1. These are the conventional wisdom thoughts of the recruiting community right now. Looks to me like OU is pushing heavily for Babalola. The commitment of Michael Fasusi has not hindered their pursuit. I've been told by my sources that OU will be able, if Babalola wants to come to Norman, OU will easily have NIL money to make a very attractive offer to Andrew, commensurate to what's going on in the market for offensive tackles. But we're waiting on a decision. The longer this goes, the more I wonder if, and with some of the weirdness going on with Michigan, with the NCAA, the more I wonder if OU could pull a late upset win here, just purely on the basis that Bill has been recruiting Andrew the longest. OU's probably the most stable environment. No one really knows what's going on with Stanford football with their move to the ACC. Didn't start well. They lost the other night. They lost their first game. It wasn't a bad loss. They played decent, but Stanford football not looking great. And Hugh Freeze and Auburn, Hugh Freeze could be there for the next 10 years, or he could flame out in 3. I don't think anybody has any clue. So Brent and OU, in my opinion, seems like the more stable situation. I'm not going to rumor, too heavily rumor monger here, but obviously, depending upon what you read and where you read it, Michigan and Sharon Moore in particular have some issues with the NCAA and this whole sign stealing mess, and Sharon is somehow is connected into this. So we'll see what happens there. But right now, no announcement from Babalola on a decision date. The longer this goes, the more I like OU as a potential kids roll back to their previous favorite, the place they know the best. So we'll see what happens now. He could decide to go to Michigan. He could decide to delay and take a couple more visits this fall. He's obviously got that option available to him. But it's looking right now like OU and Michigan probably, and I'm not sure, Auburn could offer some NIL deal that's 2-3 times what OU or Michigan's prepared to offer, and could get into this just purely by the fact that it's the amount of money is kind of ridiculous. So Christian Jones is the other player, the linebacker from Nebraska. We've got some news here, I think, that's going to probably play out in a way that's not going to really work for OU. So he was just at the UTEP game. According to some Twitter posts, he's going to the Colorado game. That's back-to-back Nebraska games. Sometimes recruiting is as easy as just watching the kid's intentions or what the kid is, what is the kid doing. That doesn't scream to me that he's not interested in signing with the Huskers. Now, we'll see how they do against Coach Prime on Saturday. I think they can beat Colorado. I wasn't very impressed with Colorado the other night. Beyond, Travis Hunter, obviously, doing some amazing catches and also pushing off and not getting called for offensive pass interference on a number of his big catches. It's just a side note. Hope he will enjoy that that push off space from Big 12 officials. So I think Christian Jones I think Nebraska, beats Colorado this weekend, and Christian Jones commits within a week. I think that's the way that's going, and really resets linebacker recruiting, because OU really wants a second linebacker in this class. Now, coincidentally, fortuitously, however you want to, whatever adverb you want to use, Elijah Melendez, the linebacker from Florida that OU brought in for an official visit in June, that OU really likes, looks really good on film, would be a really good Mike linebacker, good inside linebacker. Zach Alley has been trying to flip him from Miami pretty much all spring and summer. Well, he has decommitted. So that's the positive news. He has gone ahead and decommitted from Miami based upon a story from 247 and Rivals. It would appear that Miami's not going to get back into this picture. I think maybe they've got a bunch of linebacker verbals. They got a good linebacker class. Maybe this is the final straw between Miami and Melendez. And, you can certainly understand that from Miami's perspective. If you have 3 linebacker commitments and then one is decommitting and kind of has been waffling, then you can maybe time for you to just cut bait and move on. So back to the Auburn issue. So he was just at Auburn. Auburn, as I said, is throwing around money like A&M threw around money in 2022. That vaunted class before everybody realized that A&M was had basically weaponized NIL to sort of cheat in recruiting and do it legally. I mean, it took a good year for most of the other big-time programs to realize what A&M had done. Auburn is obviously, everyone's doing NIL deals, so I'm not accusing Auburn of cheating, but they are certainly racking up visitors and verbals in a very, what's the right word? Suspicious manner. So obviously they made a big offer to Melendez. Now Melendez is talking about coming back to OU for another visit, a return visit to OU. If you get him back on campus, you'd like to think that him watching the linebacker group work at OU, you'd like to think that the compelling argument that, you've literally got enough linebacker brain power and Norman to turn an elite kid like Melendez. And he's a top 100 kid by Rivals. Some of the other services have him in the top 200, top 250. I think he's like a top 100 kid. That's what he looks like on film. He would be a really big addition to OU's recruiting class on the defensive side of the ball. You'd like to think that if you get back on campus and he can see the OU linebacker core flying around, hitting people like they were Friday night. Meet Danny Stutzman, and basically, the message being, we don't quite have the evidence yet, but it certainly appears that Brent Venables and Zach Alley are about to go on a run of NFL caliber early day draft pick linebackers. Danny Stutzman, probably no later than a day 2 draft pick. It wouldn't surprise me if Kobe McKenzie ends up being a high draft pick when his time in Norman's is over. Same for Kip Lewis. Same for Lewis Carter. Same for Sam Omosigho. So I think you kind of get the trend line there that, Melendez could fit into that mold. Red shirt. Maybe not red shirt, depending on what the NCAA does. I like the thought of 5-year eligibility flat. I think that's a great idea for the NCAA. But Melendez is I would say is the number one target at linebacker. If OU gets some sense that Melendez is really back in play and an Auburn verbal isn't about to happen, I'm recording this Monday night, so hopefully he doesn't commit to Auburn on Tuesday, but it could happen. He was just there. They are throwing a wad of money at him. But OU needs another linebacker. Melendez seems like the most logical option. And I think, I don't think the Christian Jones thing is going to go OU's way. Melendez is probably with Marcus James, those are two extremely athletic linebackers. Even combining classes, if you think of James Nesta and Melendez as your two interior linebackers, down the road, that certainly plays and works for me. They're two fantastic athletes. So we'll see what happens with Melendez, but that could be a story I think that works out for OU and would be a serious addition to the OU defense. Again, I think he's a top 100 caliber player. So obviously we all know about the DeMarco NCAA nonsense. I talked about it before. OU didn't have, there are official visitors everywhere around the country, unofficials as well, going on. OU just didn't have anybody because it was Friday night. It's Labor Day weekend. And they couldn't. They just basically bit the bullet and took the NCAA rule and said, fine, we'll have no official visitors for the Temple game. So that means, I think, for the Houston game, OU will have some unofficial kids, 2026, 2027, on campus, whether that's OKC prep, OK prep kids, Dallas area kids, something along those lines. I think you'll see some kids, some local kids come to the game. OU will, use their connections and get some kids to the game. Some verbals will come to the game unofficially, things along those lines. So I think that's going to work out for OU, and you will see a little more recruiting traffic there. Obviously, OU is positioning the Tennessee as their big recruiting flash moment for big-time kids. So if you're Brandon Arrington from California and you want to come visit OU again and come to a game, Tennessee. If you're Deuce Geralds from Georgia, the defensive tackle, and you want to come back to Norman, the Tennessee game makes sense, right? So OU will obviously have a lot of presence. And if OU does have a couple of flip card targets out there, which, as I've talked about, I believe my sources say that OU has targeted a number of guys in 2025 as sort of flip targets, guys they think that they could flip, that they really would improve the recruiting class considerably. Defensive end being a definite position of interest, since OU only has Alexander Shield Knight and CJ Nixon. So I think they would like to have another player in that class, someone who could perhaps, a pass rush, maybe even a pass rush specialist. So we'll see how that goes. But again, I think next week we'll be able to talk about, they got some kids on campus. Now, it's been reported, I believe, by Parker Thune on OU Insider that Nate Roberts might have attended the game, the tight end from Washington, Oklahoma. That falls out of the sphere of this NCAA ruling because obviously he's watching his brother. So if he was there, he was not there as a recruit, wasn't in the recruit section, was just there with his family using Jake's using Jake's tickets that he can give to family members. So no issue there whatsoever. So it's Monday, and pretty much every podcast, Gabe Teddy, every Sooner Scoop, OU Insider, the guys on Unfair Sports, Jay over on Unfair Sports, doing a good job. Just every site has been diagnosing and attacking OU game one. So I'm going to attack it from a very different perspective and just say it's clear game one tells us that recruiting matters. If you're wondering why I have a recruiting podcast, if you're ever thinking, why do I try and update you guys every week on recruiting? It is because recruiting matters. And the clear sign of that was game one for OU. So let's just talk about the topic, offensive line. If you've been following this podcast, you know I have Caleb on about every month. We talk offensive line recruiting. Last year, we were talking offensive line recruiting left and right. OU undersigned in 2021. Neither of those players are on campus. OU undersigned in 2022. Both of those players would have been potential starters Friday night, which we'll get into. But the undersigning in those two classes has come back to hurt OU. OU has no 4-year offensive lineman in the program. They have only 2 3-year offensive linemen in the program. So when you're seeing OU struggle offensive line-wise with the reshuffling after Hickman went out, and you're wondering why, I had a lot of people asking me, why is Spencer Brown struggling when he was so struggling? Why did OU have no one to go to? And the answer is, any team right now, pretty much, even probably Alabama, maybe even Georgia, if they're playing their third team right tackle for 55 minutes in a football game, it's not going to look pretty. And we know now that Spencer Brown is the third team right tackle. Jake Taylor is the starter. Michael Tarquin is the backup right tackle. He's also the backup left tackle, which is another problem. Spencer Brown is the third team right tackle. Now, looking at the footage before the game, from the booth, they were showing players on the field practicing and all that. The only the guys that OU has that are technically tackles after Spencer Brown, the only guy other than Logan Howland, who got in the game and played, I believe, at left tackle, is Isaiah Autry-Dent, who didn't dress out for reasons I don't know. Maybe he's banged up. Maybe OU is dedicated to redshirting him and just letting that process go through, which I think they're going to have to reconsider that with, I think, almost everybody in this recruiting class and for the 2024 O-line class that just matriculated. So that's the number one problem why the offensive line looks bad, right? You've got a third team right tackle starting and playing the majority of the football game. Then you also, right now, OU has 4 centers hurt. So Troy Everett's hurt. Branson Hickman, the guy brought in to replace Troy Everett, is hurt. Gieran Hatchett is hurt. He's got a huge brace on one arm. If you talk to Gabe Eichard on their podcast, said it's clear that he's got a bicep. Looks like he's got a bicep injury, and that's not going away. And it's basically making him 1.5. Instead of a 2-armed offensive lineman, he's basically 1.5 armed. And then Josh Bates also banged up. And the stories I'm hearing is that Josh is injury has been impacting his ability to snap. His snapping has not been going well because he's banged up and the injury's been hurting his snapping ability. So the only non-banged up, non-hurt center on the roster is your fifth team center, Josh Iasosa, and your sixth team center, preferred walk-on from Oklahoma, Evan McClure, son of former OU offensive lineman Bruce McClure. So that lack of cohesion at center is killing OU. If Hatchett having to play with 1.5 arms isn't helping, and this is all comes down to recruiting. Bill, obviously, it looks like, Caleb on one of our pods said he was wondering if the plan was to start Sexton and Taylor so that Tarquin and Brown weren't really starting tackles. They're backup tackles for this year, allowing some development to go on. And that's kind of what it looks like to me at this point. You've got to have Sexton. I think after the game film from Friday and assessing where things are, you've got to escalate the development and movement into the two deep, and maybe even the starting lineup of Heath Ozetta, Eddie Pierre-Louis at guard, and Logan Howland into the second team tackle spot. I think you don't have any choice there. I think they wanted to redshirt Eugene Brooks. I think with Fabeshi Nwewu, I think you could probably do that, but I think you have to consider that. Everyone's been asking where Daniel Ekin. Some people have been asking on various message boards where Daniel Ekinkimi is. He just got cleared. He's been hurt he got hurt like a week before the spring game, so that's April timeframe. Early April, he got banged up. So he's been down for the last 4 or 5 months. So hurting his development, hurting his strength and conditioning, but he's now healthy again. It looks like he was working out in the field on some video highlights. It's time to get Daniel back into Jersey, and and also start pushing his development. Dress him out, and I think you just start thinking about moving him to tackle now, as opposed to maybe January or next spring. You need to get reps going to Spencer Brown and Tarquin. Probably reps better spent going to Heath Ozetta and EPL at left guard and Logan Howland at tackle. And maybe accelerating development of Autry Dent and Akinkimi if there's a blowout, getting those guys into the game at guard, at tackle, and start working those guys. That's why Spencer Brown, when OU had their backup offensive line in, they still had Spencer Brown in because they didn't have another offensive tackle to play right tackle. So you've got to fix that. You've got to get someone else ready to play tackle in garbage time. I don't know who that is, but that's Bill's job, not mine. So that's all the negative of why recruiting matters. Let's talk about why recruiting matters in a positive standpoint. So recruiting matters. You see it in the defensive line. You saw Grayson Holton. You saw Ashton Sanders from the first two classes. We even saw signs of Marcus Strong, who I don't know why anyone would list him at 290 on a roster when he seems to be 325 easily. So all those guys are playing. I said they're backups, sure. And then your higher recruits, David Stone and Jaden Jackson, are playing as well. Obviously, you've hit the portal productively for DeJohn Terry and Dominic Williams. So recruiting in the portal, the combination of the two works. And you've got 3 more D-line coming in the next recruiting class. You've got your 26 guys starting to get identified. 2027 offers going out as well. I mentioned that last week. So you can see the D-line, why recruiting matters, why the portal matters. At linebacker, you can just see how recruiting works. The 2022 class, Hannick, McKenzie, and Lewis are all played on Friday night. Lewis started, Kobe played a lot, and then 2023 class of linebackers, which is Omasigo, Lewis Carter, and Phil Picotti. Phil seems to be hurt again. Doesn't look like he's going to be playing this fall. So that's a disappointment for obviously Phil and his family. Hate to hear that. But also you have a portal addition who's not playing right now, Dasan McCullough, but when he comes back, he adds even more sort of linebacker depth. So you stack classes. James Nesta got into the game, and you also had Taylor Heim, and you have a walk-on in Heinicke. So you have depth there, and it's all stacked classes, giving you a linebacker room with better depth than I've ever seen at OU. Then you saw the same thing in the secondary, right? 2022 class gives you Robert Spears Jennings and Gentry Williams. The 23 class gives you Jacoby Johnson, Peyton Bowen. You have a 2021 member in Billy Bowman. Just like you have the linebacker group is led by Stutzman from the 2021 class. So you've got two seniors there. Don't have really any senior defensive linemen. They've all moved on or left the program. But the defensive line, similar additions there. But you see the secondary just stacked with players. You saw the 25. We saw the 24 guys playing. We saw Jaden Hardy, Michael Boganowski, and Reggie Powers. We also saw a key portal addition in Malone, the cornerback from San Diego State. He played a lot. And Kenai Walker was a portal addition to beef up the secondary at cornerback, the secondary, the cornerback position. So you've got a mix of talent there. Again, depth, lots of people playing, stacking classes. And then the 2025 class in the secondary has Amarian Robinson, Wimberly, and then the three cornerbacks who I think are woefully underrated. And I think next fall we'll be talking about that cornerback class, same way we're talking about the safety class this fall. So recruiting, you just see, the defense was as advertised. It was deep, athletic, flying around. And this is what stacking three classes in a row, different pieces, does for you. Grayson Holton, Gentry Williams, Robert Spears Jennings, and then the linebackers, Kobe McKenzie, Hannick, and Kip Lewis. I mean, those guys right there from that 22 class, what OU was able to salvage, plus our Mason Thomas from defensive end. So you saw defensive end, OU stacking talent there as well. So you saw a lot of players there. Taylor Wine got into the game late and made a statement of some kind. So made a statement. So that's definitely where recruiting matters positively. We see what's going on here now. Bill is definitely working on the recruiting classes. Sorry about that. My cat just got on my cord here. Sorry about that. So Bill's working on the classes, right? So we have the 2023 class at 4 players. Lost Caden Green due to the mess there. Obviously, Caden Green would be helping greatly if he was still on campus. But the 2024 class, 5 guys, already seeing them getting into the mix. They look like a good group. Sorry, the 2024, 5 guys. 2025 has 4 players in it, 3 elite guys, plus Hollenbeck, who's fits into the center somewhere. Maybe frees up Iasosa to go back to guard to give you more guard depth. Like to add a 5th offensive lineman in 2025. And I've been talking about the 2026 offensive line class. They're making great progress there. due to the camps and all the offers. So we're caught because of 21-22. Bad decisions there. You can't keep going to the portal. We're about to talk about a couple of teams there, portal wise. But you can't keep going to the portal. It looks like OU's close to maybe only needing like a portal, one offensive lineman for the portal next year. We'll see how things work. But hopefully getting out of the need for 3 or 4 portal offensive linemen like they've had to do the last couple of years. So just getting to a position where their development is working, the development cycle is working. Bill and Schmitty have developed guys, and they're now making progress in their OU should have 4 starters that are, for lack of a better term, homegrown, that are high school guys that OU has recruited. If you need to plug in a guy because someone leaves to the NFL early or there's an injury that you couldn't anticipate, that's fine. But OU needs to get to that point where they are just like they are at the other spots, like they are at linebacker, like they are at wide receiver, like they are, wide receivers got some injuries, but there's numbers there. There's players ready to step up. There's that could step up. Tight end has been reinforced by some portal additions, but now also some high school guys are coming back. Running back room, again, we got a portal addition, but we've also got good high school running backs depth there. So you just need to get to that same recruiting base that we have at the other positions. And 2022, Bill has to fill 5 slots. Defensive tackle is only 2, defensive end is 2. So, hopefully OU uses maybe some of these new coaching relaxation rules to get Bill more help. So that's where we are. That's what I pulled out of the game one. We were told certain teams and certain units on the squad looked great. We were told the defense looked great. All of those came true. We were told Bauer Sharp looked good. Jake Roberts looked good. It was encouraging to see Cade McIntyre, Caden Helms, both out there at tight end. Also, we've got Devon Mitchell in the pipeline. So that all looks good at tight end. Wide receiver, obviously we need to get Nick Anderson back, and we need to start pushing Zion Kearney and Ivan Carrion to get into the lineup and start pushing their development as well, since we've lost Jaleel Farouk as well, along with Jaden Gibson. Lost 3 of our big-time flankers, weren't in the game. And that's just, you can't be down that many wide receivers and not have it impact your passing game and your quarterback play. So that's the OU game one thoughts. So just some quick thoughts about the first week in college football. Obviously, Clemson, I don't know who they have a backup quarterback, but they need to pull the trigger on that. Obviously, as I mentioned, you should be picking up star players and star additions from the portal. OU has Deion Burks. He's going to be a star. They have Bauer Sharp. He's going to be a star. Clemson doesn't have this and needs it at wide receiver and O-line. And they probably need a new quarterback too, and should have brought somebody in to compete with Klubnik. FSU just got housed by Boston College at home, embarrassed. DJU is just an average quarterback, and the drop-off from Jordan Travis to DJU is pretty severe. FSU seems to have some quit in them, and that's a dangerous force to have on your team this early in the year. Also, it shows that you can't also rely too much on portal players. Integrating a lot of portal players, it's tough. Sometimes it'll work, but the portal is a gamble. This is why you only want to be bringing in 3 or 4 portal guys every year. Ideally at wide receiver, where the talent base is just huge. Maybe at quarterback to provide some depth, or if you're just in a terrible position and you need a quarterback, But the O-line, you're overpaying for guys on the O-line as well. You're not sure what you're going to get. It's better to develop in-house and only have to reach the portal in an emergency. Florida, obviously, Billy Napier is in huge trouble. They have serious lack of playmakers, a bad O-line, bad defense. There's some talent on that roster. There's some talent on that roster, but it's not a lot. And then finally, Texas A&M. I wasn't impressed with Weigman. I was not impressed with their wide receivers. So that's what I saw for week 1. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And please don't forget to leave a rating. Thanks, everyone.